Absolutely, and that experience will be extremely valuable in winning this top 8 match and making it to the top 4. But oh, we're already here.
Whoa!
Daniel Reyes is leading the Electabuzz and Volcarona, facing down the lead Ursaluna and Dragonite. Instant pressure there from Victor.
Yeah, and I think it's the duality of being able to run Ursaluna in Tailwind and Trick Room that we've seen quite a few times across the weekend, and I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Victor actually going ahead and trying to get that Tailwind set up in order to enable the Ursaluna and proc its Guts ability via the Flame Wall.
Absolutely, and this is the difference that the Tailwind version of the Dragonite gives you. Instead of relying on Scale Shot plus Extreme Speed plus Haze, Dragonite now has both options here. So even though Daniel Reyes is going for that Quiver Dance, will get a lot of boost, Dragonite with the Tailwind now will still be faster than the Volcarona. It has access to Haze. Here comes a big headlong rush. Not quite enough to pick up the KO without the Guts boost, but dealing huge damage to a setup Pokemon. And there's Daniel trying to counter the potential Haze coming out with the taunt on the Dragonite, but that headlong rush did so much damage.
Something so crucial in that interaction was the fact that the Dragonite outsped the Electabuzz, was able to essentially get that Tailwind set up for free with the Volcarona, actually taking so much damage, now being put into a very awkward spot. Sure, there's no extreme speed priority in order to pick up that KO, but the fact that Ursaluna can just go for an Earthquake and most likely survive an attack from the Volcarona is something that's really going to give so much momentum for Victor to be able to start picking up KOs, and if not there being KOs, you're starting to whittle down Daniel's resource availabilities.
Absolutely, but the interesting thing here is because that's a Tailwind and Haze Dragonite, Volcarona has the ability to just Terrasilize into the Fairy type and go ahead and make itself immune to anything Dragonite can do.
Yeah.
Volcarona, though, will protect this turn.
Yeah, gonna be protecting, wants to be able to slow down and start whittling away the remaining turns of Tailwind, so gonna be able to do that to a very great extent, so a bit of a stalemate, at least for this turn, but it sort of gives a bit of a perspective of what the circumstances are of the board. You need to be able to get rid of Tailwind and allow Volcarona more room to be able to essentially do what it does best. You've got the setup of the Quiver Dance, you want to be able to start picking up KOs, but feel safe and allow it to do so, because all of the pressure and offensive damage threats are from Victor's side.
Absolutely. The interesting thing here is you saw Victor choose Earthquake, meaning he could get around the Follow Me from Electabuzz, which would be a big deal if that Volcarona went for the Terra Fairy here to pick up that Pokemon, get that Pokemon off the field. Still have to worry about the Ursaluna. The Volcarona is likely faster than the Ursaluna, even under Tailwind, because of the Quiver Dance boost. If it's able, and you could see Daniel also getting the extra leftovers recovery there, if he can knock out that Ursaluna with the Volcarona, Terra Fairy will be in a very strong place to stall out this Tailwind and then start sweeping.
Yeah, I think Ursaluna, it might be a bit close. I feel like it does have a lot of bulk. It may be able to survive, but we did see there was a bit of incremental damage dealt with the burn at the end of the past couple of turns. So this is going to have to be Daniel trying to go all in and hope +1 special attack, Terra Fairy, Terra Blast is enough to pick up the job.
Absolutely needs to pick up this KO on the Ursaluna. I believe it does have the headlong rush drop, so that's basically like 2 stages of special attack. Here comes the Scale Shot, will deal a little bit of damage to the Electabuzz. 2 hits, 3 hits, 4 hits guaranteed, and there will be the option for a 5th, but not this time around. Only the 4 hits onto the Electabuzz.
Yeah, and at this point, the real question is, can Ursaluna survive this Terra Blast? The focus and connection is going. Is it enough to remove this piece? It is not! 18 hit point survival. Earthquake, the most important thing for Victor right now, clears the board over on Daniel's side, forces him down to a 4 versus 2 deficit.
That Earthquake caused a landslide and wiped away Daniel's entire board. Both Pokemon went down just barely missing the KO onto that Ursaluna, even after one Quiver Dance and one Headlong Rush drop, and the Ursaluna still has enough hit points to hang on after a tick of burn damage.
Yeah, because it's I think it lost 12 hit points there, going from 18 to 6, which means it does have an additional lifeline to be able to move. And now we've got grass terrain on the field, and there's double fake out potential as well from Daniel's side, which does mean once he can actually go ahead and try to get immediate pressure off, that's good. However, Victor still has 4 Pokemon. He's got a lot more room to be able to play around with, especially if there's like a Sinister mode waiting in the back, which honestly I wouldn't put it past him to have.
I think one really interesting part here is that Daniel's Sneasler is Poison Touch. So in addition to being able to fake out the Dragonite, there is also the opportunity to get it poisoned and start ticking that damage down, making sure that Dragonite, even if the Sinister comes in, you can keep it from staying at full health, and then you would reactivate the multi-scale. Instead, Daniel's just going to use the Rillaboom to fake out the Dragonite, and it's going to take a big facade from that Ursaluna. One hit KO. Rillaboom is off the field, and Sneasler just trying to make something happen with that Dragonite. Gets the Poison Touch with the Dire Claw.
Wow, okay. I mean, a lot of interesting interactions there, but I think the fact that Ursaluna outsped the Sneasler in Tailwind, my lord, that's a very speedy Ursaluna indeed to be able to do that, and maybe an adamant natured Sneasler on the other side of the field. However, we do know now Tailwind has expired. Dragonite has one more turn of Poison Tick in order to remain on the field and prevent getting itself KO'd before it can actually go ahead and open up a slot for a new Pokemon on Victor's side to come back. But yeah, this is a very tough situation for Daniel to have to handle.
Yeah, Victor has plenty of options here. Looks like going for the safest play of just setting up the Tailwind to make sure that whatever Pokemon are in the back, Victor will be able to outspeed the Sneasler if this Tailwind gets to go up. If it does not go up, that means that the Sneasler has targeted down the Dragonite and then took a hit from the Ursaluna.
Yeah, and I mean, it's already game over in my eyes because you got the scale shot. It just picks up the KO as long as you connect, most likely. And regardless, there's just too much for Daniel to handle. So Victor played that especially well. But what he did the best there was he recognized the Ursaluna and Dragonite could be such a huge problem that Daniel doesn't necessarily have direct line to be able to handle as well. As you can see, he looks a bit stressed because he's thinking, okay, how can I really actually force my hand onto Victor's strategy and, you know, try to shut down that mode? There's not necessarily a through line unless maybe you go down the route of having a King Gambit set up accompanied by some form of support in order to try to get that priority availability going with the Dark Terror too.
Yeah, I think Daniel simply does have tools for this. It's absolutely possible to come back from this, but this turn where the Terra Blast missed the KO on Ursaluna was devastating, especially after investing so much into getting that Quiver Dance and then being able to just clean up the entire board with Earthquake. You know, really important there was that was only possible because Victor went on an extremely aggressive line to go for a non-guts boosted Headlong Rush into the Volcarona immediately. Definitely some options to punish that.
Oh, 100%. The fact that being Sneasler, of course, which we didn't see in the initial lead from Daniel, can really put a lot of pressure via fake out, via, of course, the close combat into that Ursaluna, and force the Ursaluna to actually respect Daniel's side as opposed to what we saw in that game one. So the fact that it didn't feel threatened just allowed it to be able to essentially get rid of the Volcarona, if you think about it, because all it needed to do was survive. And nowadays, Ursalunas tend to be a bit more invested in their special defense in order to avoid a couple of very dangerous damage calculations. But I guess that's also evident because we're talking about a Volcarona. So like what I mean is a Volcarona that is heavily invested with its bulk with that leftovers in order to take a couple of very crucial hits.
Yeah, these Volcaronas, which I love, by the way.
Thank you.
Incredible. Daniel definitely need more help. Just relying on the +1 from the Quiver Dance clearly is not enough here. And we can see some of the immediate change-up. It's going to be the Rillaboom and Volcarona. So fake out pressure replacing the follow me pressure on Daniel's side, but it will again be the Ursaluna and Dragonite. A couple different things. Rillaboom has the fake out pressure, but that may just force a Ghost Terra from the Ursaluna.
But that won't necessarily be a bad thing, because you want Victor to have to try to feel pressured enough to start wasting their resource availabilities, and Fake Out is such a good way to be able to do that and actually prevent the Dragonite to feel free to either get that Tailwind set up or start getting the critical damage dealt onto the Volcarona, as the Fake Out indeed goes into the Dragonite. Quiver Dance set up, and we may even see another Headlong Rush going into that Volk.
Yeah, that's another Quiver Dance for Volcarona, getting the boost to speed, special defense, and special attack. Dragonite will flinch, and there it is. That's another Headlong Rush into the Volcarona. Deals a lot of damage, but huge difference here. Grassy terrain is on the field. That, probably won't matter because there's not a lot of redirection available right now, but the healing on Volcarona may be very important with both leftovers and grassy terrain. You're getting so much out of each turn you're stalling Tailwind now.
Yeah, definitely. It just compounds the healing properties at the end of the turn there. So I think still, the fact remains that Volcarona, how it's usually ran is you need to be able to sustain it as much as possible with the side Pokemon, with the grass terrain and fake out pressure. So we're in a situation where Daniel has a choice of going on the offensive, picking up a K on the Dragonite, but he has to have read Victor loving to play aggressive. You need to be able to face aggression with aggression when it comes to this board state, because Victor can easily just run away with yet another attack focused on it if Daniel gives him the smallest of room.
Yeah, the Ursaluna is feeling the most pressure here. Knows that it will survive a Terra Blast, but will not survive a double up. So brings in the Sinistra, gets Dragonite back up to full health, so it could survive a potential Terra Blast from the Volcarona coming through, reactivating the multi-scale. That is going to be the Terastallization on Volcarona. Now a Terra Fairy. Pure Fairy type, boosting the Terra Blast, but still also threatening big fire damage with Heat Wave.
Yeah, I do really love that play from Victor. What a way to be able to guarantee that damage calculation. Played exceptionally. And of course, you see why that pays dividends. And Dragonite is allowed to get that Tailwind set up. I don't see this Rillaboom being capable of picking up the KO or even targeting that slot, respecting the Ursaluna, meeting a Sinistra on the field, which gets a bit of additional recovery because of the grassy terrain. So Daniel is starting to lose a bit of momentum because we've got Victor making some very smooth moves with that multi-scale reactivated there. But I guess, regardless, this is a Sinistra in Tailwind. You don't normally see that at all, but the fact that we've got Matcha Gotcha, which is now powered by the grass terrain, actually means it's starting to become a threat.
Absolutely, and it's an awkward situation because the Dragonite can't do anything to Volcarona. It only has the scale shot, so Volcarona is actually kind of safe here. It currently has a special defense boost, so unless it gets hazed out of those boosts, it will feel fine tanking at least one Matcha Gotcha. Here comes Electabuzz on the field to provide additional support. The haze will come through. Dragonite has now set Tailwind and reset the stats on the Volcarona. Here comes the Matcha Gotcha, spinning it up, making a nice cup of tea. Volcarona, though, not having any of it, doesn't need it. Going to go ahead and survive that Matcha Gotcha and be able to fire back with an attack of its own. Ooh, gets the burn, though.
Wow.
That tick damage is really important for making sure that the Volcarona can't be as bulky as it wants to be. You're losing either the grassy terrain or the leftovers recovery now that you have burn.
The sustainability potential of this Sinistra under the effects of a grassy terrain is absolutely phenomenal, especially when going up against Volcarona. With now hazed out of the Quiver Dance boost means additional damage, which is great. And obviously any chip damage you could get onto an Electabuzz is greatly appreciated. But the fact that we've got Daniel still facing down a Sinister, which is healthy enough and under Tailwind, means you really have to avoid a matcha gotcha if you want to be able to get yourself out of this position, because at this point, I'm not surprised if Sinister actually survives yet another heat wave because of the compounding effects of the recovery.
Yeah, I mean, I also think just another matcha gotcha is enough now. Definitely enough to pick up the KO on that Volcarona, since it didn't get the full amount of recovery that it wanted from both the grassy terrain and the leftovers. So now it does look like Victor is in the driver's seat here. The Dragonite's still not doing a whole lot, not exerting a lot of pressure. It set Tailwind, it hazed away the stats, it's good. Here comes Ursaluna to clean up the mess.
Yeah, essentially. And this allows Victor to easily go into the trick room mode of things once Tailwind does expire. So this is what we're talking about, the duality of the different speed modes, and especially having a Pokemon like Sinistra, which enables it, is really paying dividends.
Absolutely. There's the Matcha Gotcha connecting onto both Rillaboom and Electabuzz, draining the energy from both of those Pokemon. And Sinistra, after 2 Matcha Gotchas and a Citrus Berry, is so close to being back to full health. And there is the Thunderbolt into the Ursaluna. Just trying to get that Dragonite off the field. Instead, it's the Big Bear himself.
Yeah, absolute masterclass so far from Victor, being able to really get those predictions nailed down. And like we mentioned, you could easily just go for a Trick Room Protect setup, or even go on the offensive. You've got a lot of options, a plethora at this point. And the fact of the matter remains that you're so healthy versus all of the hit point reductions and that you've removed from Daniel's side.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of health bars, Victor is way ahead in this game. Electabuzz does still threaten Taunt, so may just want to try to fish for some of those burns on that Rillaboom, which is still, of course, threatening the Ursaluna. Will do big damage with a Grassy Glide or a Wood Hammer. Seeing the Ursaluna retreat as well, not going to take any of that damage, and hoping to bait out a grass attack into Archaludon.
Yeah, the redirection does come out from Electabuzz, but that means that Archaludon can easily bait that stamina boost. And next to a Sinistra, which has Life Dew, just means that it's so well placed. Let's see if there's a burn, though. No burn so far with that secondary effect of the Matcha Gotcha, which, by the way, is double connecting so far. A couple of times it's been used, and there you have it. Stamina boost number 1 with recovery of the grassy terrain. This is looking very bad for Daniel right now.
Yeah, Archaludon, the bridge has been reinforced. The Tailwind has petered out, and the grass has disappeared from the battlefield, so not as much damage left on the Matcha Gotcha. Of course, same for the Rillaboom, but this Archaludon is just in such a good position. I don't see any way to break out of this, break through the Archaludon with the 3 Pokemon that Daniel has shown so far.
Yeah, I think Daniel's going to really have to dig deep and maybe even have a Sneasler in the back and hope that Victor does not go for Trick Room and allows this situation to occur where, at least from Daniel's side so far, he does have the speed advantage. But like we said, Archaludon in a prime position to just start getting those boosts going right next to a redirection option too. Like, this Sinistra is so well placed against this matchup.
The one thing that Sinistra can't do is block the taunt. That will prevent Trick Room, it will prevent Rage Powders. But Rillaboom is just trying to get damage onto Archaludon, but you can see even after 1 stamina boost, Archaludon is protected. What that tells me is that there might not be Sneasler in the back.
Yeah.
Because if you did, you wouldn't want to give free boost to that Archaludon. The Matcha Gotcha will finally miss the Rillaboom and connect onto the Electabuzz. Gets a critical hit, though, to make up for the Rillaboom miss. But still, you have Rillaboom and you have Electabuzz out on the field if you're Daniel Marcelo Reyes. And neither of those Pokemon can do anything against the 2 Pokemon that Victor has.
Yeah, and I think at this point you want to be able to get a rotation going from Sinistra in order to be able to bring it back for the Hospitality in the future turns, and of course get rid of that Taunt, because at this point, like we said, unless there's a critical hit from the high horsepower, there's no direct way to be able to pick up the KO on Archaludon. So I think that may just well be what Daniel has to go for.
Yeah, that is a desperation Thunderbolt right there, just trying to get as much damage as possible onto the Archaludon, hoping that Sinistra will stay in, because it can just come in and heal up all of that damage that it just took. The Body Press picks up the KO onto the Rillaboom, and now Daniel, you have to make a choice here. Just the Volcarona will be able to bypass those boosts, and can't be targeted by the Dragonite, so you do actually get a chance to Terra Fairy the Archaludon, but with Sinistra coming back in, it's going to just heal right back up.
However, there is a very potential situation of Daniel wanting, or needing, should I say, a double Heatwave Connect if he opts to go on the offensive with Volcarona to pick up a critical hit, KO onto the Archaludon if it's just within range, and get huge damage, maybe guaranteeing a 2-shot onto the Sinistra if Victor goes for that hospitality play.
Yeah, it's going to be tense. It will come down to this turn. Daniel has put himself in a position where he has an out. Gotten enough hits onto that Archaludon that it may feel threatened. Here is the retreat from Dragonite, returns to Victor as Sinistra switches in. That will activate the hospitality of Sinistra. Archaludon drinks up the matcha, drank down all the matcha from Sinistra, and there's the Heat Wave, connects onto both Pokemon. Critical hit on Sinistra, 1-hit KO, but not on the Archaludon, which is able to just be right back where it started after the hospitality.
You need to go for the Thunderbolt paralysis, same turn paralysis right now if you want to have hopes for this. Does it get it? No! Stamina is boosted yet again, and a Snarl will come out. Not pick up the KO on an Electabuzz, but most importantly, it's going to be able to just still remain on the field.
Oh, that poor Electabuzz, man. It's gone through some things.
It really has. It's seen some things as well. But I guess in this scenario, the critical hit is still pretty huge on the Sinistra, which means you no longer have that hospitality support in the back, no Trick Room option. So this leaves Victor in a situation where you need to be able to quickly pick up the KOs over on Daniel's side, because at this point, I feel like the main lifeline of this strategy has been that Sinistra, and it's just going to have to come down to the speed interactions. The Dragonite is now susceptible to a Terra Blast, definitely in that HP range, but the question is there a focus and a way that Ursaluna can get felled that Daniel can recognize?
All right, Ursaluna out on the field. The Volcarona still burned, which is why you aren't seeing it recovering health. By going for the Snarl there, Victor has reduced the special attack of the Volcarona, which could be a big deal in allowing the Ursaluna to continue to survive and firing back with an Earthquake or a Headlong Rush or a Facade. But that Archaludon really needs to make this happen. The Ursaluna really needs to survive an attack. A critical hit would do it. Daniel has found some outs, and there's still a fourth Pokemon that we have not seen from Daniel Reyes.
Yeah, and I think that could be quite pivotal as well. It could easily be a Kingambit, but I'm not exactly sure if I'd like that. I think the Sneasler would be better, but Thunderbolt does try to target down that Archaludon, and we do see the Body Press picking up the KO on a Electabuzz, so it seems like Daniel's opting for that sustain situation of bringing in a fresh final Pokemon accompanied by a Volcarona in order to have 2 pressure points of damage output to pick up the necessary KOs required.
Absolutely, and I think it's really interesting that Daniel is continuing to focus down the Archaludon. Of course, Electabuzz can't do anything to the Ursaluna, but I don't know, maybe even just taunting so that Ursaluna can't protect could have been valuable if you have the Sneasler in the back. Here it is, the Sneasler. I was ramping up to, I was worried it was Kingambit in the back, not the Sneasler. But here we do have Sneasler here. Will threaten both the Ursaluna and the Archaludon, and crucially, Victor has not terastallized.
Exactly, which means the Ursaluna is looking primed and ready to be able to forego its weakness to the fighting type. And it is already burned, which means if there's a Diaclaw in that slot, there is not going to be a new status applied to itself. So, in this scenario, we have got the Archaludon, which is completely defenseless, and the honestly big question is, can you pick up the Ursaluna, or at least guarantee the Archaludon goes down? You need to pick up these KOs right here, right now, in order to try to guarantee that game 3.
This Archaludon has taken so many attacks, I believe it's well at +6 defense. This Sneasler may not be able to pick up the KO with a close combat after all of those boosts. There is the Ghost Terastallization, there's the close combat. 2 hit points on the Archaludon. Sneasler not able to pick up the KO. One too many stamina boost. But there is the Heat Wave just to cover for the Archaludon surviving there, but that's not enough damage onto the Ursaluna as well, which is able to fire back with an Earthquake. Picks up the KO onto Volcarona. Sneasler goes down to the Focus Sash, and it is the Ursaluna and Dragonite. This is how Victor Medina started the game. It's how he's going to end the game and punch his ticket to the World Championships.
And in what style as well. Utilizing that Terra option, keeping it towards the mid to end game, knowing that if there is any chance and any doubt of a Sneasler being in the back, it's going to be able to completely be utilized with that Ursaluna, sweeping up the game, giving Victor his top 4 placement and world invitation here at the 2025 Latin America International Championships.